Good evening, YouTube. Well, y'all hear this story? Apparently, the YouTube streets are buzzing with the story about Quincy Jones and this interview he did with Vulture.com. Vulture, I don't know, is it a blog or a magazine? Anyway, Quincy Jones being interviewed. He's dropping a lot of names, a lot of tea. It seems to me that do I believe it? Why would he lie? Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones, 85 years old. He ain't got nothing to lose. Nobody to impress. He can just tell you, what he did in 1 year of his life will be more than enough to impress anybody on the earth. So he got to make up stories. So I first saw Dineva's take on this. This is kind of, I said, "What? Is this real? Is this true?" She kept saying the man was senile or something. I said, "Let me go check this out for myself." So I read his article. It's a long article. I'll attach the article in my uh, comments or in the description. Anyway, so he's saying, of course, we got to tackle this gay stuff right off the top. He's saying that most of the people that he named in this interview, I noticed that most of them are dead people. So he ain't seen out. He ain't nothing. He's just telling you his life experience. That's what you do when you get old, 85 years old. You relive your life now. So I'm sure he's got a lot of stories to tell. He's been at the top for a very, very long time. He's produced the greatest in business. So, I mean, rich people hang out with each other. Anyway, one of the things he said was about Miss Ivanka Trump. Apparently, he had dated her at some point, which that's not any breaking. I don't think it's any hot breaking thing. If she was unmarried, they were probably young. You don't say when it happened, but he took her on a date. So you can take somebody on a date. Hell, if I'm going to go to the theater in New York, go on a date. That doesn't mean that anything happened physically between them, that they had any kind of relationship. He took out Ivanka. I don't think that's any particular good any news. It's not surprising to me that he would have access to people on that level. All right, then he went on with the gay rumors. Now, he said, he's not presenting this as rumors, he's presenting them as facts. He's talking about Marlon Brando. He was very impressed with Marlon Brando. He thought he was a charming fellow, and that he was a great cha-cha dancer. Now, he also says that he's apparently he was going to the mattresses with Richard Pryor, James Baldwin, Marvin Gaye. That is not really. Is Brando even alive now? I don't know. I know most of the people he talked about are dead. But yeah, these people were mostly drug addicts. I mean, Richard Pryor, we all know he was a drug addict. Marvin Gaye, we already know he was basehead, which is a crack addict. As soon as they tell me they use drugs, I ain't surprised at nothing. I very rarely, and y'all think I'm bullshitting, but when I'm selling drugs, I very rarely met anybody. My drug was crystal meth. Didn't do it. Many of them surprised me. Big prison gang members and things. When we got on the streets, they all did it. It's very rare you came across somebody who did drugs, serious drug addicts, who didn't mess around. They all messed around. That's what the drugs do to you. It makes you freaky. So I'm not surprised. I've never heard rumors about Pryor, but I know he was a cocaine addict. So it's not a big leap. Then in Hollywood too, back here, I guess he's talking about primarily the '80s. All these drug addicts, all these orgies, and all this kind of stuff. There were many more than one person in the bed at a time. So yeah, so you could be introduced to men that way. So I wasn't particularly surprised about that. Of course, we know that James Baldwin was gay, and we knew that Marvin and Richard were drug addicts. So people say, "Oh, they be bisexual. I do drugs. I don't do that." A lot of people do dope. Are free. It just takes down your inhibitions. That's what dope does. I mean, maybe it's a little more extreme than that, but I know plenty of crackheads. Same thing. it removes your inhibition. So basically, you will have sex with anybody. Anyway, so he talks about that. He talks about the Beatles. He said they were terrible musicians. They were a popular act. I wouldn't take that from them. I wouldn't say that, that the Beatles had to be master musicians or they had to be Jimi Hendrix. No, they were songwriters. They did some great records. They were very popular. How can you deny their popularity? I mean, people liked what they did. Did I ever single them out as being the greatest guitar player that ever lived, or the greatest bass player, or Ringo Starr, greatest drummer? No. So that wasn't a bad thing. It's just an old guy talking, 85 years old. Think about who the hell am I talking about? Oh, thinking about Quincy Jones. I ain't 85, but I feel like it at times. Think about this man. He's doing his interview sitting in a Bel Air mansion. Those are like $15-20 million mansions. So anytime a person has made it all the way to 85 and they're still sitting up in Bel Air in the $40-50 million mansions, they got some stories to tell. Yeah, so this man managed to remain successful his entire life. So of course he was exposed to a lot of stuff, a lot of people. And I think the key thing here is most of these people are dead he's talking about. All right, so he wasn't impressed with their musicianship, but he was a master musician. So our take on what a good musician is will be totally different than his. He's thinking about it from a creative, from the way he saw. He's used to dealing with professional musicians all day, every day. Okay, he talked a little bit about Michael Jackson. They said, tell us something about Michael Jackson. Another dead man. He singled out that Michael Jackson was greedy. I would say that Michael Jackson was privileged in the music industry. He says greedy. He would take people's stuff and wouldn't give them credit for it. He said that he was a thief. He would steal parts of people's songs, take the credit for it. Now, in my mind, he was privileged. In other words, I'm a star. I'm a superstar. I am probably the biggest pop star that ever lived. So if I see something, I like it, I'm taking it. And he would just take it. That's pretty small, pretty petty. And I don't think Michael Jackson was sweating, $1 million here and there. I think it was the credit. He wasn't paying these people, or he wasn't acknowledging them for the credits on his music. He wanted the credit for himself. So Michael Jackson, as he says, was greedy. Of course, the interviewer wanted to know more about Michael Jackson. He said, well, Quincy said, I was always on him about all this plastic surgery. He said, Michael Jackson always claimed it was because of the disease he had. Well, the skin lightening, when it first came, I remember the interview. This is right before Michael Jackson had any scandals at all, right? I think it was with Oprah Winfrey. Michael said, people asked him about his skin kept getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And Michael Jackson, this is before any scandals. Now, we all loved him at the time. He was at the pinnacle pop music. He was the Beyonce on steroids of that age. So he said he has this disease, whatever that thing is, where you have different colors in your skin. Well, I didn't initially believe it. Nobody believed it. We all laughed about it. We thought it was a joke, that he was denying that he was lightening his skin. He said he had this disease. But later on, when I started seeing his hands, I said, well, that's not a natural color. His hands, his arms, he did have that disease. So he was telling the truth. I don't think anybody that I knew believed him. So the lightning part, the plastic surgeries, Michael was saying that it was a disease. And Quincy was telling him it was bullshit. Stop it. He says it was because his father told him he was ugly as a child. He has his nerve. Michael was an adorable child. It would have to be he was traumatized in some way. And he had all that money. When you have all that money and you get into something, get into changing your face and all that, yes, it became an addiction. He got addicted to plastic surgery. He ended up at the end, he didn't even have a nose. Half the time it was covered up. So he destroyed himself in that way. Quincy said he was trying to get him to stop doing it. But Michael was too far into it at that point. It's an addiction. So I believe Michael Jackson when he said he was addicted to plastic surgery. Um, what else did he say about Michael? Talked a little bit about sleeping disorder and what eventually killed him. He went into the pharmaceutical problem in this country and how these pharmaceutical companies are getting people hooked. Now he said some things that I don't know if I would have said, even the people are dead. He's got good in talking about the assassination of Kennedy, and we've heard rumors about that might have been mob related before. He's saying he knew. I forget the name of the family, and I wouldn't say it if I did, because getting a giggle from y'all, dropping some tea is not worth me putting my life on the line. He's saying that he knew that these people were, in fact, that Kennedy was assassinated by these gangsters. He named the gangster family. I don't know if I would have went there because they could open up an investigation. Even now, the country still wants answers about that. He could find himself talking to the Supreme Court. They opened the case up. Anyway, he talks about that. So I wouldn't get there. So I don't think. I mean, I even seem to think the man was losing his mind. That's why he was talking. I don't think he was losing his mind. He said his mom died of dementia, but he was totally coherent. He knew what he was doing. He's old. He's lived a fascinating life. I didn't hear very much from Quincy Jones all these years. I always knew who he was. I was a teenager, but I haven't heard him talk a lot. I know, you get around older people, they're reliving their life. So some things he wants to talk about. He does have the presence of mind to talk about dead people. People are not going to hurt, So anyway, it's a fascinating article. You guys check it out. It's Vulture. I'll put it in the comments or something. That's yeah. Don't do dope, and you won't have to be doing things that surprise you. Put it like that. I love crystal meth. They call that queer juice, because people who you never dream will be interested in sex with other men. They get that shit in them. I mean, they're just all over you. So that part is not fascinating. And I'm sure Quincy Jones has a lot more information than he's sharing in this article. It seems like he just threw a little spice in there because you know what people want to hear about. Threw a little spice in the article. But they've got to be in the hundreds. I mean, all of Hollywood was hooked on fucking cocaine in the 80s. So, anyway, later, people.